Hey guys, Darren Carr here, Coach of Wise Watching Pods, and welcome back to another episode about AFL Fantasy Preseason. On today's episode, we will be reviewing the Round 0 results that happened over the weekend, looking at the 4 games that occurred, looking at all of the popular fantasy players that you should consider to start in your starting squad. Hopefully today's video will be a bit shorter, considering there was only 4 games that occurred with the opening round. So without further ado, let's sort of get into the games. Alright, so we'll try and do this in one take. So for what I'll be doing for this video, similar to what I've been doing all preseason, we will be continuing to build our squad that we've been obviously developing through the match simulations and community series games. So this is where we currently sit after the community series games. Looking at the squad, there's going to be quite a few changes already, but we will get into that as we go through the games. So without further ado, let's get into the first game. So the first game that happened was the Sydney versus Melbourne. Quite a few people here that we were quite keen to see. So the first one, I'll bring up the teams as well so we can look at that. The first one that I wanted to talk about was Errol Gulden. Come on, let's get this working. Alright, Errol Gulden is here in our squad currently after what he's been doing all preseason. He came up with a 69, which was obviously extremely poor and disappointing compared to our expectations. Just as I sort of was slowly coming around to the possibility of starting him, he drops this 69 on ahead, and now he's got a massive break even of 179. So, which is really disappointing to see. Which has just thrown me off. I can't start him with that break even. He's definitely going to lose value. And yeah, he's just pretty much put a line through him for me. Just can't start him with that. But in saying that, the same logic still applies in the sense that if you think he's still going to go at 130, 140 to start the year, and obviously we've mentioned it quite a few times about what his run looks like and what his scoring potential is going to be, the same logic there is applied. And so if you're still keen, realistically you just have a much more unique player than what he was previously. I think he was up to like 25% owned prior to this game. It's dropped down to 15%, which I do expect probably to drop a fair bit more before the round 1 lockout, which is in just over a day now. So yeah, that's enough on Errol Gulden. Just like I said, I will be taking him out of this squad for that reason. The next one we'll talk about is Grundy. So Grundy, we really saw the best of Grundy, I thought, in my opinion. He was the best he had looked all preseason. Scored the 118, was extremely... it was exactly what we needed to see. He got the 23 disposals, 6 tackles, showed he can be that extra mid again like he was in his 120 years. Not saying that he's going to go 120, even though he probably should have scored a 120, 130 in this game. But he showed us exactly what we needed. So for that reason, I've definitely locked him in my side. And I'll be taking Cherry out. I know that's probably a bit controversial in some sense, but I just think that having Gawn and Grundy are sort of your set and forget like it has been for many years in the past. We know what Gawn can do, and I was going to touch on Gawn a bit later because he did go the 87, which was slightly disappointing, but I don't think the game really suited him too much. He only had the 1 mark, which was very unusual for him. It was a very wet and sloppy game, so he didn't get the marks that he usually gets around the ground. He was quite dominated by Grundy and was really worked over by a lot of the teammates getting into him. So I think if his floor score is an 87, then lock me in, because he's gonna have ceiling scored quite early on, I'd say, with the likes of West Coast, I think, in round 4. So you definitely want to be on board for that one. So for me, these are my rock lineup, and I'd say that's pretty popular across the board at 34%. And what's Grundy up to now? Over 50%. So that break even, you just can't ignore it. He's going to skyrocket in value. I don't know exactly how much, but yeah, you'd expect it to probably be quite significant, maybe 40 to 50k if he can score another, 90 to 100. So lock those 2 in. The next one I wanted to talk about was James Jordan. I think he did enough. He scored the 76. Role was good again. Had a couple of CBAs, but was mainly on the wing. The one thing I really like about him is that he just pushes into the stoppage, even though he's a wingman. He's sort of like that Errol Goulden that wants to push into the stoppage. Gets a few tackles on the outside, so which is really uncommon to see from a wingman because he got the 7 tackles, which was really pleasing to see. So he's just a lock in my side. So that doesn't change anything. Next one was Matty Roberts. So here's a bit of a surprise for me. I'll put my hand up. I'll be the first to put my hand up and say that I wasn't confident with Matty Roberts to begin with. He hasn't featured a whole lot on my side throughout the entire preseason just because I thought they had too many guys back there already with your Blakeys and your Lloyds. So, but the interesting thing that I saw was that he's actually pushed Lloyd out of that position and onto the wing in a bit more of a half forward role, which was really surprising for me. But at that 245k price, you can't ignore it. You know, he scored the 91 on the weekend. He actually looked quite good because he had the 95 disposal efficiency. Took a few kick-ins as well, which was nice to see. He's going to get DDP after round 6, so that's something to keep in mind. I know we probably have a few of those players that we want to throw back there, so our squad may be a fair few defenders by the end of after round 6, so something to keep your mind on. But yeah, he's a lock-in for this side, so I'll just throw him in there. He definitely won't be M1, but we will adjust as we go through. So that's enough on Roberts. The next one I want to talk about on the Sydney side, which was sort of a bit of surprise, which was Isaac Heaney. So he scored the 121 and looked like an absolute superstar as a midfielder. We've seen it before in patches. It's just, it always seems to pop up every single year that he starts preseason in the midfield. He plays that sort of 70 to 80% as a midfielder, and then as soon as the season happens, he goes back to being that half forward role and doesn't get too many CBAs through the season. But it seems like this is what they want to do. I know there's a bit of a comment after the match that they said that he wasn't actually planned for him to be in there as much, but I think with what he showed, he should push in there a lot more, and especially with guys like Luke Parker and what's his name? Taylor Adams, for the next 4 weeks until the bye, then I just think that he can really skyrocket his price. He's obviously got the break even of 16. He's gonna likely go up 50k post round 1 if he can have another decent score, sort of that 75 to 100 range. So yeah, I think he's locked into this side at this current point in time. Got to figure out how I can do that. I'll get rid of Mackenzie. So obviously there's a few players in here that didn't play on the weekend and were probably more fringe to actually be in this side come round 1. So I'll just make a few changes as we go. That are just purely based on my opinion. I hope you guys don't mind that too much, but I'm just going based off the data that I have. So I've locked in Heaney. Obviously, he's got a really good run, even as a midfielder or a forward. He's got Pies, Essendon, Tigers, and West Coast. And then, like I said, Luke Parker and Adams should be back post their bye in round 5. So at worst, then you can look at getting off him in round 6 if, you know, Adams and Luke Parker start to take some of these points. All right, that's enough on the Sydney side. Let's move over to the Melbourne side. So I already talked about Gawn. Next one I wanted to talk about was Salem. So Salem looked elite in the first half, and he was getting close to being a lock in my actual side pretty closely. So he was at that 75% CBA time in the first half, but really slowed down in the second half and sort of slotted back into that half line a bit more. I think Sparrow sort of took the more CBAs, which was a bit of an interesting switch up. I'm not sure how that's going to continue, but I just think he has a bit of upside. His break-even's 50 now, but I think he's priced around that 78 area. He's pretty much going to be that Angus Brayshaw role, and definitely has a lot of upside from that, probably 10 points. So if you're keen on Salem and with that early buy, I definitely could see it working out for you. obviously priced at 700. You can't really go wrong. I don't think too much. So, yeah, that's all I really had on him. But I haven't selected him in the side just because I think there's a few better candidates that we can slot in later on. Next one was the rookies. So we had Windsor and Blake Howes. So we'll touch on Howes first. Don't really need to go into him too much. He scored the 74 and looked really comfortable at that level, even though he's a 20-year-old. And I just think he's a lock at your D8. At that break even, he's going to go up close to 100k if he can score anywhere near that 70 again. So you can't miss out on that cash gen, and I just have slotted him in right at that M8 spot. I haven't really considered about fielding him just because I do think we have a bit of depth in our backline so far, so I haven't included him in that. And obviously, I haven't considered fielding him, so... And the last one was... Where is he? Oh, he's on the field, sorry. Caleb Windsor. So, I was pretty hot on Windsor come the start of the preseason. Obviously, one of the first rookies that we really got to look at in the preseason. Looked quite good, looked quite comfortable at the level. But in that game, he looked sort of a step behind the pace that is required for AFL level. And I can quite easily see him becoming the sub very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised even in round 1 if he's named the sub. So, yeah, that's the one thing to consider. But the main thing that I'm taking away from that, he hasn't scored over a 50 yet in the matches that he's played. I think he scored like a 46 in the Community Series games where he kicked 2 goals, and he only scored the 45 on the weekend as well. So he hasn't scored over a 50, and I know he has a nice 9 break even, but at that 282k, you really want a little bit more scoring potential, probably 60 plus really. So for that reason alone, I have decided to save the cash, and I've decided to drop Windsor from my side, or this side, as well as my own side. So. But really, that's all I had for that game. That's one of the most relevant games, but we'll move on to the Lions v Carlton. So there was only really one person we're looking at from the Lions, and he's currently on our side, Kitty Coleman. So don't really need to touch on him too much. He was actually quite disappointing in this game up until halftime. I think he was only on the 34 points, only had maybe a handful of marks, and wasn't really getting involved in a lot of the changes like you would expect with his main distributor role that we've all seen in the last couple of games. So, but we all know he's got an ACL injury now. He's done for the season. And I guess my only advice for you guys would just be to put him on your 2025 list and keep him there, and because he's going to be much cheaper next year. So that's all I've got to say for that one, and I'm going to remove him from the team for obvious reasons. I should touch on Zach Bailey. He did look good. He does seem to having more of a midfield role this season. It was sort of confirmed that that's what his role is going to be. I just think there's better options at his price. He's obviously 650k. We've obviously got like a Fisher who doesn't have an early buy, has probably more of a scoring potential. So if you're really keen and you really think he has the scoring potential, I personally don't, but go for it. But it's a no for me. So, but besides that, there was really no one else. Lohman, I believe, was the sub, so it wasn't anything to consider really. Yeah, that's all I really had on this game. On Brisbane. Let's go to Carlton. Where's Carlton? Looks like we already have the squads. That confused me. So, only two that I only really want to touch on one, which was Zach Williams. He really did enough. He scored the 69. Really, to justify the pick, I wanted a 70, but I'll take a 69. He looked at the pace. He started off quite hot and slowly started to slow down with probably just a bit more match fitness he needs. But I was quite surprised that he didn't have any managed time at all. I don't even know if I can see it now. I can't. But yeah, he still had quite high time on ground, which is pleasant to see for his first game back. And yeah, I think at that nearly 40% starting, 40% selection, you're pretty ballsy to try and go against that. even though he does have obviously an injury risk, I think if he can put together maybe 2 or 3 games at his price, he'll go up 100, 200k quite quickly. So, especially now that he's got a break even of 17, so he'd go up probably close to 40k if he can have another decent score. So, jump on. So I've locked him in this side at my D5 spot, which is nice to see. But yeah, that's all I really had. Kerner again looked good, but I'm not super keen on full forwards. Walsh was injured. Binns is the emergency. Hewitt looked good as well if you want to take a punt on like sort of a mid-pricer, but I think we have a few better options. I did also want to touch on Doc's ACL injury, which is very unfortunate for him. He's obviously been through the works for most of his career, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last we actually see of him, being now he's in his 30s, but hopefully he can make a full recovery and he comes back and be a cheap option for us next year. But that sort of opens the door a little bit for some of the defenders, so maybe Zach Williams gets more of the ball and provides a bit more upside to that. Maybe a Nick Newman can really be that main distributor like we saw at the back end of last year as well. So just all these things you got to keep in your mind when you're considering injuries that really affect the mainstay player in the side. So just something to think about. But in terms of starting selections, that's all I really had on Carlton. So let's move on to the third game. So that was the Suns v Tigers. Where am I looking? Suns. We'll start with the Suns, as I have a few more fantasy relevant players that I want to talk about. First off, we will talk about Sexton, who's already locked in our side. I think he did exactly what we wanted to see. Scored the 80, had a nice and consistent scoring throughout the game. I think he literally had like 18, 20, 23 in like a 20 or something like that. So it was really consistent throughout the games, which was really pleasing to see, and something that we don't see quite often with a lot of defenders. They start off quite slow and they sort of junk it up in the fourth quarter. Doherty was the biggest name to do that all the time. So, but yeah, it was nice to see that. But the only thing that sort of concerned me was that he was the third highest scoring defender of this game, with behind Powell and Buderick. He also was Powell was the main kick-in taker. I think he took 3. Buderick took 2, and then Sexton took 1, which he actually didn't even play on from his kick-in, which was disappointing to see. So realistically, that should be an 83 if you want to play it that way. But all I wanted to see from Sexton was a 60 plus to lock him in. That's still 20 points under his starting price. So lock him in at that F4, F5 spot, depending on your team structure, and don't even worry about it. Just lock him in, even if he's got that early bye. Next one I want to talk about was Flanders. He scored the 92 and was much better than last week. Obviously, he scored like the 54 or whatever it was, but he still probably hasn't done enough to justify selecting him, and hasn't really forced our hand. So I think we can jump on at a better stage. So for that reason, I haven't included him, because I think, like I said, there's a Heaney that was priced below him who's going to jump up in price a lot quicker rather than a Flanders. So that's just my thought process. You may think differently. Only had one more for these guys, which was Took Miller. His really one is on my hot list. In a normal preseason, I'd be all over Took Miller and I'd be starting in my starting squad, but just because of that early round bye, I'm not. He looks like a fit and health Took, like we've seen back a couple of years ago when he's averaged at 120. My only advice would be to, if you're not starting him, make your plans now to when you want to get him in. My plan so far is hopefully after his bye, so round 4, round 5. In his round 5 matchup, he's got Hawks, Swans, West Coast, North, and then Lions and North. Sorry, so he's got 3 really good matchups in a span of 5 weeks. So I want to get on at that time. Hopefully, he's still a bit cheaper at that stage. So I'm hoping he has a bit of a slower start to the year with a few harder matchups, but it's definitely on my watch list to jump on quite quickly if I can, and should be sort of around that top 8 mids. So There's that one. I think I spoke about Woodrick and Power kind of previously with Sexton. Yeah, definitely probably have a bit of upside here. Obviously has a has a 6 break even and will jump up in price. It's just whether you can justify where does he slot in. Do you take him over a Zach Williams, given they probably both have the same sort of injury history. Buderick hasn't played more than 10 games in the last 2 or 3 years, I believe. So I think just with the 60k that is on Zach Williams' head, I don't think it's justified, and I think staying with the pack is probably more of a better solution, especially being such a vanilla team that we're building here. All right, let's move on to Tigers. Let's quick take a drink. All right, so there wasn't too many people I want to talk about on this team. They're not super fantasy relevant, but as a sneaky, I think they will probably be quite relevant in terms of captain picks come this year. I do think they'll drop quite far down the ladder and start to leak a fair few points. So something to consider for your captains coming soon. So Gibkiss was the only one that's sort of relevant here. It's just a no for me. He scored the 39, doesn't have the scoring potential. I'm not willing to pay up that extra 56 grand for someone that's only going to score, close to a 40, and it really isn't going to put much money on top of his head, especially with the likes of having a house and a few others that are probably priced around that 250k that could have better scoring potential, like a Zach Reed at this point in time. I know we didn't see Reed on the weekend because Essendon didn't play, but we've seen it in the match simulations. If he is named, he definitely has a scoring potential. And the last one was just Campbell, Seth Campbell. Was obviously came out of nowhere. Didn't see much of him in the match the match sims in the community series games. I think he maybe scored like a 19 in the community series games, which is a bit of a flag here. But he scored the 61 as a 200k forward. Got the negative 38 break even. He's gonna probably put close to 60 to 70k on his price range if he can score close to that again. Maybe reduce your expectation because he's not going to kick two goals every game. But if he can get close to a 50, he's jumped up. He's got a good enough starting point that he's going to make a bit of money quite quickly and probably can jump off quite early on if you are keen. So I've slotted him in this team, just saving a bit more cash from that 282k of what was the name? Windsor, sorry, Caleb Windsor. Really no one else I want to talk about. Dusty didn't play, but he is confirmed to be playing round 1. Bolton, really, he's not fantasy relevant for me. Not playing a nice role. Shorts is playing. He did play well. I think he scored 103 with Vlostone back, so I had a bit more confidence with him that he does probably have a little bit of upside. But I still think he's probably fringe best top 6 defenders. I think we have a few better options, but it's really just that awkward price that I think there's some better options. And that really, that D2 spot is really uncomfortable for me, and is where I'm really having a lot of issues at this point in time with, a lot of the likes. I'll actually bring it up here. Get rid of the club and bring up defenders and bring out that price range of 800 to 900k. So we'll get into Lockie Whitfield in the last game. We've got Tom Stewart that I've been pretty hot on all season. Houston, who could have a bit of a bump this year. Ryan, we know but he was top 6 last year. Short, we've just spoke about Newman now that Doherty's out. So there's so many guys around that price range. Even Oangoli Malira, who's currently in the side. There's so many guys there that could be pushing that top 6 defenders. So it's really trying to narrow down which one's going to be the best one at this point in time. But we'll continue to move on the games. We've got the final game here with GWS and Collingwood. Not too many people to talk about here. We'll start off with GWS and might as well get straight into Whitfield straight away. Come on. So Lockie Whitfield scored the 137 and was simply elite. Had that magical role of having the main distributor role. He had 14 marks, and I think the next best was like 9 or something like that. So it really showed that his teammates are looking for him in transition, whether that's a cheap 45 kick back to make that aggressive kick back into the midfield. They're just really trusting him in on that. So it was really pleasing to see, and we have seen a ceiling from him in previous years. So I really liked what I saw. Obviously, has the break even of 29 now, and is expected to go up sort of 40 to 50k if he can have a good game again. Obviously has a good run. I think that's been widely spoken about, and I've touched on it previously. GWS have North, West Coast, and then the bye, and then come out to the Suns and St Kilda, who were also quite easy matchups. So it's definitely one that could kickstart your season and could be a lock for top 6 if this role continues. My only flag, and it's not really so much a flag, it's just more of something we've been trapped to previously, is that there's so many good guys back there that can at any time take this role throughout the year. Their backline is one of the best that there is, and there's so many guys that have the same skill set as Lachie Whitfield. So it's just a bit of a flag, but I think there's a lot of safety in going with Whitfield now that we have that mega price, that big score that he had on the weekend, and you expect him to go up in price. So there's a bit of safety there, and if he doesn't really have that roll off in the first 2 rounds, in round 1 and 2, then you can sort of jump off come round 3 in his bye, when he should probably still have made maybe sort of 30-40k if he doesn't go as well as we expect. So for that reason, I have locked him into this side at that D2 spot. I know I just spoke about it being a bit of a complex one, but I think there's a bit of safety here with having Lachie Whitfield, and really saves your behind if you're not confident in any of those other selections. Alright, well, I've got a few more to go through, but still got a fair bit of money here left in the bank, so we'll have to do a bit of a reshuffle at some stage. So next one I want to talk about was Toby Green. Scored the 116. Don't really need to talk about him too much. He did the usual Green things, got plenty of disposals, got a couple marks, got a few tackles. He's expected to be sort of the top 8 midfielder just with a natural progression, only being 23. He's been given that role as a main midfielder at GWS, and he's just slowly developing his game. Like I said, he's got a pretty good run at the start of the season. My only flag, obviously I've spoken about it previously, that he didn't score that well against these guys in last season. I think it was only like 70 and 80. So it's definitely something to consider, but his ownership is rising quite quickly. So could hurt you if you aren't jumping on. I probably should include him in the side, and I probably will, to be honest. I just need to figure out how. So for now, I will remove Crouch, and I'll just slide him in here. And move everyone down, I guess, if this wants to work properly. What I should do for the rookies, just before I keep continuing on, obviously we need to do a bit of a reshuffle here. What I will do, it's a bit of a tricky one because we have so many good rookies this year, and it's so hard to determine who's going to be a good one. Obviously McKercher, Sanders, Matt Crouch. So it's either Sharp or Clark that's probably to go from me. I prefer Clark's role, but I prefer Sharp's scoring potential. It's a tricky one. It's a very tricky one. For the sake of this video, I think I might just cut Sharp, just saving that additional bit of cash. So I'll throw Wilson there. I'll throw Matty Roberts on the bench. And to have a bit of a captain option, I'll do that bit after because I've got to make a few more adjustments again. So we'll continue on. So the only other couple players that I kept my eye on during this game was Cadman. So Cadman scored. Where is he? Why can't I find him now? What have I done? I've stuck in midfield, so that's what I've done. Alright, Cadman, he scored the 47. He visually looked better by the eye to me. He was getting more up the ground. He was getting more of those marks and tackles up the ground. He scored 2 goals. We know they've got the good run, so he could definitely score quite big if he can get on the back end of a few marks and tackles. Get on the back end of a few goals. and really boost his cash gen quite quickly. So you definitely got to consider him, especially with his -10 break even. He's probably going to go up close to 40k if he can score a sort of a 50 to 60. So definitely one to consider. It's just where does he slot in? Who you're willing to take out? Do you save the money and drop Lazaro or drop a Wilson? It's so hard to sort of determine. I like Lazaro's role better than a Wilson, but I like both their roles better than a Cadman. So I don't think it's worth the risk at this point in time, because there's every chance that Cadman, only scores a 30 in those games and gets held quite well, and then there goes all his cash gen, right? So I think I have more faith in Lazaro and Wilson. Obviously, this is all dependent on teams being announced, but yeah, I haven't included him in the side. A couple more was Toby Green. Obviously, with the start that they had, he's one that I've been keeping an eye on. If he was fit and really hit the ground running, that one you probably could lock in as your F1. But I think now the better options have popped up, and now that he was held quite well on the weekend to a 40, that now his break even's 163. You can't start him and put a line through him. The only other one I really wanted to talk about here was Toby McLennan, or whatever you got to say. Terrible name sometimes. But he was a sub. I think he came on and scored like a 47 or something like that within like 30-40% time on ground. So he's one probably to consider if he is named in the team. So obviously having a negative break even, he's going to make quite a few cash. Again, his job security probably isn't as secure as like a Lazaro or a Wilson or even a Campbell, knowing that Campbell's already been selected for the Richmond side on Thursday night. So definitely something to keep your eye on, but yes, he will go up in price if he is selected. And if he's not, then keep him on your favourites list and jump on when he is named throughout the year. So let's move over to the last guys, which was Collingwood. Not too many fantasy relevant guys here. We know McRae wasn't selected in the side, so he just crossed him off, get him out of your team. He's not playing. Dacos did Dacos thing, scored a 111. Didn't do enough to force Ihan to start him. I know he's still somehow 53% owned, which is crazy, but all I can say is make your plans to jump on, because he is going to be a fantasy gun for many years to come, especially moving into that midfield role. And this is going to be the last year that we have him as a defender. So make your plans. I plan to get him in sort of round 7 area. So there you go. Alrighty, so that's all the games that we had to go over today. Obviously, quite a few changes have occurred. We really just need to start finalising this side to really make it a bit better. So what I want to do, see if I can do this a bit off the cuff. So I want to have a good captain option in Bontempelli. Obviously we have Green, Bontempelli and Gawn, who's sort of your main guys. You expect them to sort of be their top of the line. So Bontempelli should be M1 for the season, hopefully, or be around that mark throughout the periods. Tom Green, very similar, sort of top 4 midfielder. Harry Sheasel should be top 2 defender. Gawn should probably be top 4, even top 3. Ruckman behind Marshall and English, and probably Grundy's just behind him in my eyes, and probably X-Series even behind him or even behind Nank. So it's starting to look like a bit more of a guns and rookies sort of team structure, with a lot of guys that you should have sort of expect to make that leap and sort of be mainstay guys that you don't have to trade out through the season. So sort of like Steele, you expect him to jump back up to his 105 range, and sort of be around that mark where you don't have to trade him out until, luxury season at the back end of the year. Same with Newcomb. I spoke about him previously. He looked really good, and he looks like he's going to break out this year, and so sort of hopefully get to that 105 mark if possible. Obviously Nick Martin, he's been spoken about quite widely about his halfback role, so he will slot back into the defense 50 quite quickly after round 6, and we can start moving guys on like Yo and Williams and Caulfield, who aren't expected to be anywhere near that top 6 range. But to fill in this last area, what I thought I would do is do a bit of a structure change and really get rid of some of those risky mid-pricer picks. So I've already got rid of Crouch and Wines, and all I want to really do is push these guys up, put Matty Roberts on the field. Sorry, this is lagging for some reason, because he has shown that scoring potential, being a 91. You expect that role to stay, so he's definitely a fieldable option. And we'll just bring a player back in Jeremy Sharp, and that should be about it for our squad, I reckon. Yep, still 62 grand in the bank. Put Bontempelli as our captain. Bit of indication there, 1755. So yeah, that's really all I had for today's video. Hopefully this gives you an indication of what my thought processes were over the round 0 games and what players I was looking at. And I think we've built quite a decent side. In terms of what my side looks in terms of this one is a little bit different, just because I'm still quite using my hard rule of no primos have that early round bye. I know it's probably overthinking it a little bit, but that's just my thought processes, and I think I will stick to that. So I don't have like the likes of Tom Green. I don't think he's enough value to start there. I'm tossing between Lockie Whitfield and a few others, but a lot of these other guys present a lot of value, and I don't have too much concerns. I think I only have like 9 or 10 guys that are on the early buys, so something to consider. But yep, that's all I really had for today, guys. Hopefully this is a quick enough video for you guys to quickly review before the round 1 game starts to lock out, and you can get your sides justified with just over a day to go now. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Give me a like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this video and what you think about this side. What would you change? Yeah, that's all I really had to say. Hopefully you enjoyed, and give me a like. Cheers. Bye.